Welcome, everyone. This is Dev 113 with the fancy name, the League of Extraordinary Development. What Heiko and I want to do today is share with you kind of the state of the nation from an application development standpoint in the Domino space. So that's what we're going to talk about. And let me do this. There we go. First of all, a big thank you to the sponsors of Collabsphere for making this happen. I think we all are looking forward to community events in the very near future where we can actually get together and share a beer. But in the meantime, I think this is fantastic that we're able to do this. So thanks for all of these sponsors for making this happen. Just a quick note about Heiko and myself. I think most of you know that we're involved with the Canadian user group and have a YouTube channel. You can download these slides and catch up on this stuff. We've got other fun things to talk about, but certainly, if anything, I guess I'll put in a shameless plug because we posted a video a couple of days ago. We are now on to our second application development course. Following on the heels of the AppDev Pack course that we did last year, we're about to start releasing videos on more full stack application development on top of Domino. So keep your eyes on our YouTube channel for that. This is me. I'm coming to you from Vancouver in Canada, and I've been a Notes and Domino developer for a long time. Mentioned C3UG, also a member of the OpenNTF board, and as of last Friday, I am, for the coming year, the chairman of the board.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. That's me. We are both sharing the Canadian coastlines here. So I'm coming to you from the East Coast, from beautiful Shelburne, Nova Scotia. My name is Heiko Voigt. I'm also a long-standing software developer in the Notes and Domino arena, HCL ambassador. A couple of other things you can see right here, but I think we'll, for the sake of time, we'll just continue on. So what are we going to be looking at today? So first of all, we want to start off by taking a little bit of a peek outside of the yellow bubble. So what are the current trends in software development regarding tooling, programming languages, and also content-wise, what are people building currently, and what is the positioning of Domino applications that we're currently building on? And we're going to take a look at the right tools for the right jobs. And they will take a broader look on our Domino toolbox on what's in there and what can it be used for. So what's the right tool for the right problem statement that you might have at hand. So I came across these beautiful slides from JetBrains. They're doing a developer survey every year, and a couple of you guys might have heard in it. Maybe some of you have already participated in it. But I think it's quite significantly interesting to see how the programming languages have developed over time in popularity. And I think it reflects pretty good on what we see also in our little arena in the web development space. So JavaScript is one of the largest, the most largely adopted language that we see, followed on by Java. So it's not really, it's a very close race in that. Popularity shifts on depending on the years that you look at it, because it goes up and down a little bit. But a lot of the program languages that we have in our tool set inside of Domino are also the ones that are the currently most used ones out in the community, which I think is a good sign. So we're not like completely abandoned on old stuff, but we're still participating in everything that's hip and widely used outside of our world. We had this. I brought this in because I had a couple of discussions within the community. Okay, so we have Domino Designer, and Domino Designer is only running on Windows, and everybody else is cross-platform and can develop here and there and everywhere. And we are thrown back to using a Windows machine with Domino Designer. Interestingly enough, if you look at JetBrains, the JetBrains survey, a lot of people are developing on Windows as their base operating system. And also things like the subsystem for Linux and Windows is not widely used currently. So I think also having us in most of the cases being thrown back to Designer and Domino isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's the thing that I take from this job or from this survey part. a lot of other people are using the same environments than we do. And so I think we're still almost at least current. Let's put it that way. And the next thing that I came across in this chapter in survey was, what are people developing for? So for which platforms do you develop? And a lot of most of the stuff, and I think that coincides with a lot of projects, at least I am doing currently, is we're building web components or web applications, being it backend and front-end components, most of them for the desktop and mobile platforms. From a more features and from a functional point of view, it's websites that is most popular, but also like specific applications for specific industries are very popular to solve specific business needs. And if we take a look at what, at least from our perspective, Domino brings to the table, we'll see that a lot of the stuff that at least we are currently building is in the same space. Would you put the transition in? Yeah. Okay. So where's Domino position from what we see, right? We're building specialized applications, solving business problems. We're building business applications, and most of that is done for exactly the same platforms and also for exactly the same purpose. So Domino is, and that's, I think, is the great news, the good news that we can see in that Domino is capable to deliver solutions in each and every one of these spaces, which was somewhat debatable over the last couple of years, maybe. But with the recent development within HCL, I think we're on a very good path to get forward with the return of Domino as a professional development platform for a lot of different use cases.
For me, I had to smile at this one, especially the right side graph and the very first choice up there that says websites. You know, if we think about, certainly I think about my career and when I started building notes applications, you know, websites were all static content. And we were building business applications in Notes and Domino. Of course, today, websites is synonymous with any kind of a business application that's available in a browser. So it sort of makes me smile at the interpretation of what people think they're building and what kind of a tool they're using. Okay, so let's transition into our couple of questions here. And they basically have to do with what kind of applications are you building? And question number one, are you building external applications that will access Domino data? So to be clear here, we're talking about just accessing the data on a Domino server. We're not building an application on Domino. We're not building any kind of a front end or any sort of business logic with respect to workflow or anything like that. This is simply, I want some data off of my Domino server and I'm going to use it in my application elsewhere. So what are the right tools for the job here, or at least what are your options? We'll talk about the specifically the right tools for the job in a second. So accessing Domino data. Number one, probably been around the longest, Domino Access Services. Well, technically not, I guess, because we could write C API and Java agents to serve up data a long time ago. But anyway, Domino Access Services is on the list because it is a tool that is currently available. Probably you're not going to want to use that tool, but it's on the list. The newest kid on the block, of course, is the Domino REST APIs, also known as Project Keep. VoltMX is on the list primarily because you can, well, I suppose we could debate that it should not be on the list because VoltMX is more all about the front end, and you're probably going to talk to LotusScript to get your data off of the Domino server. Obviously, the AppDev Pack is there and available for us to use, and we'll talk more about that coming up. I mentioned LotusScript, and specifically the newer additions to LotusScript to do with REST calls in LotusScript and certainly formatting JSON data. Obviously, XPages, something that's close to, I think, a lot of our hearts, can still do that kind of stuff. You can use the REST control to do things, and as I mentioned before, Java and C. This is you. Yeah.
So if you're building apps inside a Domino, within the Notes client or for the browser functionalities, you still have the same sort of notions within Notes. There's not much change, right? It's still the same stuff that we've been using all over the years. A couple of things have been extended, like the LotusScript part over the last 2 releases, and a special extension, of course, is DQL, which is a completely new piece of the puzzle. But from that point of view, that's what I would call legacy Nodes development parts. So everything that we have to build, we have to use to build Nodes applications, being it for Nomad Web, or for mobile apps through the Nomad platform. Sorry about that. That's what we're talking about here. If you're building for the browser and let's say more HTML-based mobile solutions, we'll still have. And I came across a couple of customers this year. You wouldn't believe how much stuff they still have in the first incarnation of Domino web development, which is forms-based, pages-based, pass-through HTML, web query safe agents, web query open agents, all that good stuff that nobody knows about anymore, and for a good reason. But there are still tons of applications out there that are using this. So while I admire everyone who's running his business in these things, or well, admire might be the wrong word for that, but it's one of these things where we have where Domino backward compatibility in my personal view is a blessing and a curse. Of course, it's great for everyone who did investments years and years and years ago, that all that stuff is still working. But a lot of these customers today have the issues that their developers are simply retiring, and there's nobody there who actually understands that stuff. Because if you have somebody else coming in, someone new coming into your organization, and you sit in front of designer, opening up a forum where you have embedded JavaScript, embedded HTML, pass-through HTML, and stuff like that, all hoarded together, boy oh boy, those people are you really have to like you to stay within your company. So that would be something that I would hopefully see that a lot of people will use a little bit more of the more modern ways to build HTML and mobile applications, and move away from that stuff. So the Nomad family is one easy part. So it gives you of course, somewhat limited functionality, but good functionality to make your existing Nodes applications available on mobile platforms and on in the browser as well now with Nomad Web. Volt is a option for that, but bear in mind that HCL Domino Volt, from a positioning point of view, is mostly designed for building quick, short-lived applications from scratch. It's not a tool that helps you much if you want to renovate or innovate with a large business application in the back of your head. You can do that, and we've seen several excellent examples on that. But its main purpose as being a tool for local developers or for the citizen developer, a lot of these examples are doing things that we as Nodes developers have been doing for years. We start to push the boundaries of the tool to the max, and that's exactly what I see in that tool again in a lot of these sophisticated applications that we see on Volt. So bear in mind that it's designed to be a citizen development tool, not necessarily one to allow you to modernize your applications or large-scale applications that are existent. You can do that for a certain extent, but bear in mind that there are limitations. XPages, of course, is still, unfortunately, the only viable option that we have. That's also another blessing and a curse. We saw a little bit of investment in the last release of Domino with the Bootstrap 4 stuff coming into XPages. But other than that, the position from HCL is clear that there will be no more investment in XPages. Only the necessary part to keep the lights on and keep it working. So if that's a good way forward for you, if you're building new applications or starting a project right now, you have to think about that.
Okay, the fun one.
Yeah, the fun one. So this one here is, well, we came up with that slide already last year to give our indication, and bear with us today. This is by no means an HCL positioning. This is by no means, this by only means our own positioning where we see those specific tools in their specific product lifecycle. And that's exactly the point that I think that is important to know. If you're going to start developing on Domino today, you should take a look at the lifecycle model of each and every tool and programming capability that you're looking at. And of course, there's a couple of things that are tending to be more or less out of the equation, or at least be at the end of their life cycle, so to speak. Domino Designer is one of them, at least it has been until 12.01 now. There's some certain investment in Domino Designer, and we see some things going forward, maybe with the Nomad web family in that space. So it will be interesting to see where Domino Designer is going to be transitioning over time. But in its current form, with stability and all the stuff and problems that we have, it's dated, and well, it's not really fun to work with. LotusScript and add functions, actually last year we had them even further down the drain before Nomad and Nomad Web hit the scene. So those things are actually moving back up a little bit in the life cycle. So still usable, little new investment, but still usable and making the changes. XPages is clearly on the way downhill. From a life cycle perspective, as the end of that schema or is somewhat imminent, that HCL might be thinking about having it in maintenance mode, keeping it on, but there's no big investment coming anymore. There's little new investment like with the Bootstrap 4 stuff, but nothing new coming in that space. So is that a good alternative for your project to work on? Maybe, if you already have large scale XPages applications, if you have the skill set in-house, if you're familiar with Java, servlet, beans, and all that good stuff behind it, it is still a viable platform. Java as the Java APIs and the AppDev Pack part for Java and all those kind of things are more or less now relatively mature. There's regular investment, but not overly much. That's why we put Java a little bit more to the right in that space. The AppDev Pack still sees some updates. It's still debatable, and we have to see what happens with the upswing now for the HCL Domino REST APIs, whether this has some implications and some impacts on other tool sets. But for now, this is still a viable platform, but with a very specific use case if you want to build external applications. That's why Graham had mentioned it before on the different slides. So it has a somewhat gives you some restraints in what you can use it for. Things like DQL are definitely moving up the stack pretty quick. So they came in very quick. They've moved up the life cycle pretty quick because they're heavily used across the board. They're used in the AppDev Pack, they're used in the clients. They can be used by the Java APIs. They can be used by LotusScript. So adoption here has been pretty quick, and a lot of people are making use of DQL capabilities. Same goes for Nomad, beginning with the mobile part, but now we're also with Nomad Web. I think this will get another boost for a lot of customers that so far have been reluctant in doing any other approach of modernizing applications and bringing them to the browser, or maybe reducing complexity by moving out the client distribution in their organizations. So I think the Nomad family will definitely see a great upswing. VoltMX is a tool pretty new to the stack, which can operate with Domino data as well. It's also a tool to build external applications, nothing inside the Domino, besides any whatever kind of website integrations into the sidebar or anything like that. So some minor sub cases there. It's a tool in comparison to Volt. I think I heard a great positioning from Andrew Manby the other day. He positioned it as low code for pro coders. So it's a tool set for pro code developers that need to speed up development because they have tough deadlines to meet in their projects. They need a tool that helps them along to build websites and mobile sites rapidly with great integration capabilities that also include the HCL portfolio. So if that's one of your cases that you're having, take a look at that tool. It's great tooling. It's hugely expensive, of course, as well. So it's a great tool, but you pay some bucks for it. We already talked about Domino Volt, and I mean the next big star that's showing up now from a REST API perspective, of course, is Keep. The artist formerly known as Keep. So the HCL Domino REST APIs that are new to the table, and we hopefully will see them in the product with 12.01, I think, by the end of the year or beginning of next year, depending on the release cycle there. That's in beta. We also saw, I think today, there's been a deep dive session with the two gurus, Stefan Wissel and Paul Withers. Yesterday, we had a great session on how to get started with it by Thilo Wolprich. And we will have a quick tour tomorrow. Our other C3G guest, our core member, Colin Breckles, and I will go through a full stack application and how we can take an existing AppDev Pack application and move it over to the REST APIs. So that's going to be one of the things that we're talking about tomorrow. So I think that's from a lifecycle perspective, a quick run through. Let's head on. Graham.
Okay, go have a drink of water. Yeah, go have a drink of water. So this is probably a similar representation to the previous slide, but what I was trying to do here was to come up with a magic quadrant that sort of indicated, again, what's the right tool for the job. So to talk about the axes, first of all, pro code is towards the top, low code is towards the bottom. Aged tools are towards the left, and where there is investment from HCL is towards the right. From a color coding standpoint, top to bottom, we're talking about advanced capabilities in the blue. Purple means that it's powerful. Orange means that it's useful. Consider that also meaning that it's basic or that it's for non-technical developers. I put Volt as a non-Domino thing because it is, of course, coming from the outside world. And I also wanted to make note of the fact that, from a developer standpoint, wave the OpenNTF flag. And obviously, there's lots of resources on OpenNTF that can support what you're trying to do. But if we start in the bottom left-hand side, obviously, at functions, Domino access services, pass-through HTML. We've kind of touched on all of these already. But they fill that entire quadrant. So you're doing basic stuff, and that basic stuff is completely valid. It's just tried and true, been around for a long time. If you want to do basic things, we had a fun little experience with another group the other day where we were talking about, do we want to have an input form built in Volt, or should we use something else? And we all went, well, we're all XPages developers and could build it really quickly in XPages. If you're looking for a basic input form, consider the fact that unless you really know XPages is massive overkill for a basic input form. We built it really fast and it works perfectly fine, but that's because we've got years of experience of working with those tools. If you've got somebody in your organization who's coming in, who's new and isn't experienced with these tools, Volt is going to be a lot faster way to get up to speed and working on a basic input form compared to XPages, obviously. So that's what we're trying to balance out here. Clearly, we've talked about Nomad and the REST APIs. That's where the majority of the investment has happened recently from HCL and obviously VoltMX as well. So as we move up, we're now moving into more pro code tools and more advanced stuff. And again, kind of clarifying the reference to XPages being something that's aged and seeing little amounts of investment. The AppDev Pack, of course, we've mentioned that it burst onto the scene like a rock star and has kind of reached a level of maturity that HCL is comfortable with. And the new conversation is now around the REST APIs, but understand the difference in coloring. And again, I'll echo what Heiko just said, where the REST APIs, Paul has said this to me, are low-code tools for pro coders. So again, save you the time of building your own scaffolding to do REST APIs. You can simply latch onto these and take advantage of them, provided things are set up properly. Whereas with the AppDev Pack, you're hand coding all of that stuff. So understand the difference between them there. LotusScript, we put on the investment side primarily because it has received some, and I have to smile. I sat at a Collabsphere. I want to say it was Grand Rapids. So that's a good 5-6 years ago. where I watched Devin Olson get up and give a presentation that just railed against LotusScript because it hadn't received any new investment in a very long time. So kudos to HCL for recognizing that there were some opportunities to spruce up LotusScript and make it new. And I've also heard Jason Gary talk recently about reinvigorating LotusScript. So being a LotusScript developer myself, and I know that Jesse, just plug your ears, I'm happy to see an investment in LotusScript. Obviously, the C API has been, I won't say completely rebuilt, but there is a new version of the C API that we can use for version 11 and 12 that has been spruced up and certified to run on the new platform. So interesting. Again, this is Heiko's and my take on things. Happy to engage in a conversation about these and see what other people think, and where there are other things that maybe we're missing that you feel are valuable. By the way, quick plug for Daniele Vistali's presentation that was just before ours. If you haven't seen it and you're into Java and Notes, please do check it out because it was really enlightening. Good job, Daniele. Okay, I'll start on this, but Heiko, this was Heiko's brainchild, and this kind of is more of a takeaway. We will be publishing this in a PDF by itself on the C3UG website next to the slides for this presentation, so you can take it away and have a look at it. But really, it represents all of the tools that we've been talking about, and then kind of breaks them down from the perspective of, what are you trying to do? So are you a low coder, or do you have a solution that is a low code type solution? This graph or this table tells you the kind of tools, in our opinion, that are most valuable to use to do those things. Heiko, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Graham, you already said it all. I mean, it's way too much stuff to walk through this. As I said, there's, or as Graham also already mentioned, this is our take on things, right? We want to make this available to you so you can fill it out on your own and have your own stakes on it. But I came across this in another conference, in one virtual conference last year, where somebody asked me, do you have something like this where I can take a look at if I want to build as a large-scale web application with Domino? What toolset can I use for that? And that's exactly the cross-reference for here, so to get some starting points. As I said, this is completely our take. Feel free to discuss this with us or have your own take on it. But I think for some people that are maybe currently only in a certain segment of the development arena and making their way to other areas of the product, it might be useful to have some kind of a reference where I say, okay, well, if I want to do pro code and front-end development, okay, I should take a look at the REST APIs, for example. So that's mainly the whole thing about it.
One thing that jumped out at me when Heiko put this together and we were reviewing it together, if you take a second to look at the XPages column, and I know I'm beating a dead horse here, the investment in revitalizing XPages is astronomical, but guess what? Of everything that's on here, all of the tools that are available that you can use, XPages is the only one that checks all the boxes. You could use it to do a lot of different stuff. Now, again, like I said before, for simple applications, yeah, it's overkill. So fair enough. But I'm an XPages guy. I love it. Okay, let's carry on here. A quick word about source control. So we would be remiss if we were talking about tools and development. And certainly we're speaking to not only the people that have been in the community for a long time, but people who are new to the community. Domino source control, not the best. And this is something that I think HCL recognizes needs investment. Obviously the first line there says it all. The world is using source control, and so should we. But there are challenges in doing it. So worth learning about. And one of the things, this is another shameless plug, is that we had an OpenNTF webinar a couple of months ago where Paul and Jesse did a really good introduction to Git and GitHub and talked about kind of the pros and cons of using it in the Domino space and acknowledging some of the challenges that we have. There are opportunities to use source control in Domino. Certainly, if you're an individual developer, we've all been kind of living dangerously over the years, and source control gives us the ability to add that additional level of support or backup. So it is something that's important to pay attention to. And as the clock strikes the bottom of the hour, that is all that we had to share. So we can take questions now. And I want to do.
Can we unmute the participants to just?
What's that?
Can we unmute the participants?
Yeah, I was just going to do that, or
Okay.
at least trying to figure out how I can do that. Feel free to type in your questions in the chat as I'm trying to figure out how to unmute everybody. Huh. If anybody, Daniele, how did you do that in your last session? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Take that one, Heiko.
The advantages of the AppDev Pack.
Well, sorry. So the question from Theo is, can we briefly talk about the advantages of the AppDev Pack?
As always, it depends on the problem statement that you have to work on, right? The AppDev Pack is, in my opinion, and that's only my opinion, designed for people from the outside world that have to talk to Domino at some certain point. And with basic web development tools, like you have a Java-based application server, have your applications running there, and you need to a certain extent talk to Domino data and do something in the Domino environment, but that's not the main task of your application potentially. Or same goes for Node.js integrations. You're building, for example, full stack web applications, and to a certain extent and at a certain point of interaction, you have to interact with Domino and some databases and some data in the system from within some code that runs on a Node.js implementation or a Java server. And having a native integration into a JavaScript API and a Java-based API is coming in handy for a lot of developers, because you get an object model and you get a couple of methods and access components that allow you to quickly interact with the system without having to know a lot of stuff completely in Domino. Is it better than is Keep the better alternative? Also, I think it depends on the use cases that you have. So far, from a more generalized approach, you could say yes. If you can work with REST APIs, you can do literally the same stuff or more than the same stuff with Keep that you can do with the AppDev Pack. If it's important to you that you don't have to that you not want to deal with REST calls in your code that you're writing, but you want to have a more language bound integration, so you have a clearly integrated thing like into the JavaScript world and also into your Java world, then AppDev Pack might still be something that's more usable to you, but it depends on the use case. Keep, of course, brings a lot of stuff to the table that the AppDev Pack currently doesn't have. So we have lots of stuff, for example, on APIs available to you in the administration part of the house. So from that perspective, it potentially the Keep, from my perspective, could be a successor for the AppDev Pack to a certain amount of time. But currently, I think it's depending on the use case what makes more sense to you than that.
I'll just chime in quickly. We don't want to, well, we got time, but the AppDev Pack requires a Node.js server. You can run that on your Domino server or on a different box, whereas Keep all runs on the Domino server. The AppDev Pack gives you the flexibility to write your own business logic in your APIs, whereas the Keep stuff is pretty much calls directly to the database, and you've got to do your business logic at the same time as you're doing your calls. Now let's think about this for a second. Keep, the whole point of Keep is to, again, give another way to talk to your Domino data from an external application. So you're writing a Node.js application somewhere anyway, a React app or what have you. So it's kind of balancing things out. One of the other really important things to keep in mind is how old we all are. And one of the original goals of the AppDev Pack was to open Domino to all the young kids that are coming out of school who want to be full stack web developers. I had a client that I worked very closely with who was looking to replace a person who left the organization. And we ended up interviewing, or at least trying to interview, a whole bunch of young people. And as soon as we said Lotus Notes, they just declined the interview. But I said, don't say Lotus Notes, say full stack web application development, because that is what the future of Notes and Domino is, right? We're going to build applications that are going to talk to Domino data. And yes, we're going to have Nomad web apps and all the rest of that stuff. But in terms of opening the world up to new, younger generation, that's what we're talking about. So the AppDev Pack gives us that, Keep gives us that. After that, we're starting to get into specific use cases. Yeah, I have said to unmute everybody, so you're welcome to ask questions.
With the one that's down there from Bob. I mean, coming from a sole Domino perspective and looking at your infrastructure components, you're right. Why managing another web server in outside of Domino? But I think again, this is a use case and a misperception for a lot of people, because I think the AppDev Pack was designed for people who have, as I said, have already decided that their web development platform is outside of Domino. So they're already running Node.js service, they're already running Java application service outside of Domino. They're not necessarily interested in having everything and the kitchen sink running on a single machine. Like some other people might have that use case, of course, and it's a viable use case, but there's other use cases out there as well. And for those people, the AppDev Pack delivers a very thin layer of integration into the Domino world without leaving their platforms that they're actually currently working on. So from that perspective, I think it still makes sense to have it. Could keep substituted to a certain amount, absolutely. So we'll see how that clarifies in the future, I guess.
Yeah, another important thing to understand is
also it's depending on where you come from. If you're a developer who's mainly working in the Java side of the house and in the Node.js world, and you already run these applications that you can maintain and manage, and you have a certain need to access Domino in a certain area of your development environment, that's where the AppDev Pack is really great. That's where Keep can help you. And also, I mean, don't underestimate the complexity that Keep brings to the table. It's designed to integrate with Domino because it installs besides Domino. If you look at it from an architectural point of view, it's a very loosely coupled system that talks to Domino. So it's its own stack, but very closely tied to the Domino server. And it's installed with an install and runs on top of Domino, so you don't have to maintain anything else outside of it. But it's still its own stack sitting on top of it. So, or besides it, depending on where you position it. So from a technical point of view, this is way heavier than a lot of people think it is. So by taking this complexity away, it's hopefully stable enough that it won't ruin your Domino server when something goes sideways in that stack. But I guess it will be, because HCL is heavily working on it to make it as reliable as the Domino server has always been. So from that perspective, I think that's a good way forward too. But as I said, it depends on like everything in this table that we showed you. It depends on where am I coming from. So what is my background from a skills perspective? What is my background from a problem statement perspective? And what am I aiming for? And then you can pick the right tools.
Other questions? I'll go back to that slide. Get some windows out of the way. Nothing. Okay, so just to wrap up then, again, a thank you to the sponsors. We put in some additional supporting material that are going to be in the PDFs that you can download. Heiko went a little bit crazy pulling down different stats from JetBrains, so there's a couple of additional slides at the end here that are of interest for you. Last call for questions. All right, everybody. Oh, we got one. What happens to Domino Designer? What will I use instead? Yeah, that's a very good question, and I know that there have been conversations inside of HCL for a while now about taking all development off of the Domino server and giving you the ability to use Visual Studio Code, for example. All of the Java developers in the room right now are smiling because they're using their own Java development UIs. So, understanding how sort of the architecture of the Domino server works, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? You can update files. Once you get into the world of source code, you can start to integrate those files into your NSF and be able to run them. So you're right. Domino Designer is the thing that we need to use right now. And yes, there are challenges with it, but it works. But yeah, I know that the future conversations are around giving us more flexibility to be able to use whatever development tool we want to use and simply update the files that are necessary to do whatever it is that you want to do on the Domino server.
Yeah, what I found pretty enlightening today was a talk with Thomas Hampel, where he already agreed that something has to be done about Domino Designer. He was I think people weren't able to wrangle out what he has in mind about what needs to be done to Designer, but at least they're thinking about it, and hopefully it won't take us too long to see some fruits of that thinking.
Wonderful. All right. With that, thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of the conference.